Saskatchewan Period. I recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Just a wash in positivity, Mr. Speaker. But yesterday, during Premier's estimates, I asked the Premier if he thought that Saskatchewan people were facing an affordability crisis. Here's what he had to say, and I quote, "I wouldn't say it's an affordability crisis," end the quote. Mr. Speaker, how can the Premier be so out of touch with the cost of living crisis that Saskatchewan families are facing?
Recognize the Premier.
We hear the Leader of the Opposition stand day in, day out and talk about an affordability crisis in this province. Mr. Speaker, there's a vote today that should have been voted on 2 weeks ago. Mr. Speaker, it's actually delayed by the members opposite, and I'd ask, why was that vote delayed? Why was that? It was delayed because a number of caucus members were attending a Trudeau campaign school in Ottawa. They answered, Mr. Speaker, those members answered a call to arms put out by an Ottawa-based Labour organization to plot strategy ahead of the federal election vote. Attended a Trudeau campaign school to plot strategy ahead of a federal election vote, Mr. Speaker. How could the Leader of the Opposition say that there is an affordability crisis and then delay a vote because they have to go and attend a campaign school to extend that affordability crisis that Canadians might be facing? Mr. Speaker, I ask again today, in all seriousness, Mr. Speaker, I ask again today, how could you do that to Saskatchewan people?
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier knows very well that it wasn't a campaign school, and he knows very well I have no problem standing up to any federal leader or any for that matter when it comes to delivering for the people of this province. Today there's going to be a vote. That's right, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to see if this Premier really understands what people in this province are going through. Right. Here's the question. I've asked it every day this session. Will he finally understand the struggles, the crisis that people are facing in this province? Will he vote for our call to scrap his gas tax in Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Premier.
If it's such a crisis, why did the Leader of the Opposition delay it 2 weeks to go support Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh in extending the affordability challenge that Canadians are experiencing, Mr. Speaker? And the wrath of policy decisions coming from Ottawa, I can assure you that all Canadians are experiencing this the same, Mr. Speaker. The wrath of the annually increasing carbon tax, Mr. Speaker, imposed by Justin Trudeau, supported by the NDP, committed to yet again yesterday. The NDP is committed to, they are going to support the increase of that tax from $65 to $80, Mr. Speaker. In this province, we had made the decision through our Minister of Crown Investment Corporations to remove the carbon tax from home heating, natural gas and electricity, Mr. Speaker. That alone is going to save Saskatchewan families more money than anything that is put on the floor of this legislature. Was supposed to be voted on 2 weeks ago, couldn't be voted on because the members opposite were attending the Trudeau campaign school. They answered the call to arms to go and try to get Justin Trudeau elected one more time.
Recognize the Leader of the Opposition.
You know what hasn't needed a vote, Mr. Speaker? It is allowing people in this province to have some relief. This government, at any time in the last year, could have done what the minister from Alberta did and suspend the provincial gas tax. The fact is, they have chosen not to. Well, Mr. Speaker, today they're going to get a chance to show it on the record. Here's the question. Is the Premier today going to vote for our motion to suspend his PST on gas and diesel in this province? And if he's not, I want to know, Mr. Speaker, what's he going to tell the people at the co-op in Sherbrooke about why he voted no?
Recognize the Premier.
There's a lot of resources in this assembly for the opposition to inquire with today. There's the president of SARM here that the member from Elphinstone might have a few questions for about one of their members. We have an Alberta minister here that the Leader of the Opposition might inquire with, because rest assured I could say this, that if the Alberta government had the ability to remove the carbon tax from their home heating, natural gas and electricity, they most certainly would do that, Mr. Chair. The question that the Leader of the Opposition needs to answer today is why we did not vote on her motion 2 weeks ago. Why is it such an urgent motion, such an urgency, Mr. Speaker? The affordability crisis is just that, a crisis, but yet they need to delay it so that she can attend a campaign school to ensure that Justin Trudeau can once again be elected in this nation, Mr. Speaker. That individual, that government, supported by the NDP, are putting forward the policies that are causing inflationary challenges, not just for families in Saskatchewan, but for families across this great nation.
Recognize the member from Regina Rosemont.
Mr. Speaker, you see the Premier trying to put on a bit of a show for guests from the West and those in the gallery here today, Mr. Speaker, but the facts of the matter are the facts. And of course, this leader and this opposition brought forward that motion to suspend the carbon tax. This opposition stands opposed to the carbon tax, but it's that Premier who plays silly partisan games day in, day out that, of course, have failed Saskatchewan on this front in making that argument. But this is a provincial government that's lost the plot, and they're out of touch with Saskatchewan people when it comes to the generational cost of living challenge they're facing inexcusably. They've stuck Saskatchewan people with more taxes and more costs during this time. Now today, that government will have a chance to vote once again on the motion to suspend the fuel tax. My question to the Premier, will he stand up today and finally offer some relief for Saskatchewan people and suspend the fuel tax, the provincial fuel tax, for families across Saskatchewan?
Recognize Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, that member opposite is well aware this is their only platform plan. This is the only thing they've ever suggested. They actually got onto it once NDP in Manitoba gave them the idea, Mr. Speaker. The savings families have in the home heating is more than what they are suggesting. But interesting, they give us no idea of how they would pay for their plan, which is, again, what the NDP do. We're going to forego revenue. Which roads are they not going to fix? Are we going to go back to the days where the NDP told the citizens of Saskatchewan, fix your own roads?
Recognize a member from Regina Rosemont.
Tired spin, Mr. Speaker. It's a real shame that the Sask Party can't find their voice on important files for families. And it's a shame that they've been able to find their voice on the risks and hit facing producers and our economy with the proposed merger of multinational Bunge and Viterra. I raised these concerns and asked questions to the minister at committee to find out personally what he's done on this file to engage, and he didn't say a word. Not a word. This is a bad deal for producers in our province, and it shouldn't go ahead. What's that Premier going to do to stand up for Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it is this party and it is our Agriculture Minister that recognizes that agriculture is the backbone of our economy, and we will always stand up for our producers. The Minister has consulted with stakeholders about the proposed merger, and he's heard their concerns. He met with the leadership of both companies to ensure our producers' feedback is being heard, and these companies continue to have presence in our communities. He made a submission through the Ministry of Agriculture to the Transport Canada and Competition Bureau, raising the stakeholder concerns that he heard, and the Competition Bureau's report addresses some of those producers' concerns. Viterra and Bunge can now propose measures to address the Competition Bureau concerns, and these will be examined by the Bureau, and the results will be provided to the Minister of Transport. And we will continue to monitor it as it goes forward.
Recognize the member from Regina Rosemont.
Ask these questions to the Minister. It's crickets. Not a single word from that minister. Mr. Speaker, this deal matters to Saskatchewan, and it shouldn't go ahead. I was here when the Sask Party stood up, and we all stood united against the takeover of the Potash Corporation of Saskatchewan because it was the right thing to do. But the Sask Party, under this Premier, ain't what it used to be. Here's what Sask Wheat, Sask Barley, and APAS have to say about the deal. The merger may reduce incentives for Viterra to build its proposed canola crush facility in Regina, Saskatchewan. The increase in export basis and canola crush margins would reduce producer income by approximately $770 million per year, a $1 billion hit to producers and our economy, and putting at risk the canola crush project here in Regina. Why hasn't that minister, why hasn't that Premier done anything to stop this bad deal for Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think the member opposite heard my previous answer, quite frankly, when I described all of the steps that have been taken. Viterra and Bunge have an opportunity to provide measures to address these concerns, and there will be a report from Minister of Transport, which is expected to be in June of 2024. We will be letting the process move forward and watch it closely.
Recognize a member from Regina Rosemont.
Mr. Speaker, it's a bad deal for Saskatchewan. Producers' incomes would take a $1 billion hit. Value-add jobs and the canola crush project would be put at risk. Downtown head office jobs in Regina and good jobs all across Saskatchewan would be put at risk. Here's what the Competition Bureau had to say, quote, "The proposed acquisition of Viterra by Bunge is likely to result in substantial anti-competitive effects and a significant loss of rivalry between Viterra and Bunge in agricultural markets in Canada." It's a bad deal, Mr. Speaker. It's a bad deal, Mr. Premier. Why has the Ag Minister been missing on this file? Why was he crickets instead of standing up for Saskatchewan? Is the Ag Minister the Agriculture Minister for Saskatchewan or for a big multinational conglomerate? Why won't that Sask Party stand up for Saskatchewan?
Recognize the Premier.
That's a fair question coming from the opposition, Mr. Speaker, considering the Ag Ministers that they appointed in years gone by. But I can assure Saskatchewan residents that the 3 Ag Ministers that we've had, including the current Ag Minister, is going to have the back of our agricultural producers day in, day out, Mr. Speaker, has his entire career, because he's one of them, Mr. Speaker. He's one of them. Mr. Speaker, I can also assure Saskatchewan ag producers that the Premier of this province and the Saskatchewan Party government of this province is going to have the back of rural Saskatchewan residents and going to have the back of all of those that are in the ag industry, whether it be primary production or value-added production that we see today as we see investments pouring into this province. And yes, interest from international companies, Mr. Speaker, but rest assured of this, we know that the Competition Bureau has made comments on this. We're now looking at the companies and to the reaction that the companies are going to make. And we're watching that very closely, Mr. Speaker. And if the members opposite think for 1 minute that myself or this Ag Minister or this government or the MLAs on the governing side are not going to stand up for the agriculture industry and the ag producers and all of those that are involved, whether it be in downtown Saskatchewan or across this great province, Mr. Speaker, they got another thing coming.
Recognize the member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Lots of huffing and puffing today, Mr. Speaker. Nice to see the Premier get up on that question. Maybe we'll see him finally get up to answer this one. The Sask Party's tire fire of a deal still has so many unanswered questions. We still haven't gotten an answer about the Premier's meeting with folks from Surecom back in 2016 when they say the Premier himself made promises that they would have access to the scrap tires they need for their value-added manufacturing in their business in Saskatoon going forward. The current ministers had the chance to get briefed up on this file, to walk over to the Premier and have a chat with him. So did the Premier make that promise in 2016? And if so, why did he break it? Hear, hear.
Recognize the Premier.
Speaker, that question was answered yesterday. I want to read a quote into the record. Richard inspires confidence, trust, and integrity. His passion for rural governance is like none other. His leadership and dedication to making a difference to municipalities has not gone unnoticed. He has had a measurable impact on the people of Saskatchewan over many decades. That is why Richard Porky Porter was appointed to the TSS board by the internal appointment process that they have, not by government, Mr. Speaker. But I would, and those are the words, that quote, pardon me, are not my words. Those are the words of Ray Orb, the president of SMRs. So the member from Elphinstone, rather than slandering members of this province on the floor of this assembly, could have the opportunity to ask.
Premier, I asked the Premier to withdraw and apologize for that comment.
Withdraw and apologize.
I recognize the member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I'll ask the question again. It was about the promises that Shercom says he made in 2016. Did he make those promises? And if so, why did he break them?
Recognize the Premier.
As I said, I answered that question yesterday, Mr. Speaker, and I would say that when this government does make appointments like any other government, Mr. Speaker, and I had made a number as the Minister of Environment in my time there as current Ministers of Environment do, Mr. Speaker. We choose to make those appointments on the merit of the individuals that are there, and we have made many appointments on the advice of various organizations like SARM, like SUMA, labor organizations, union organizations, Mr. Speaker, as well as recommendations that come from elected members across the province. We've made those types of appointments to, for example, the Saskatchewan Professional Outfitters Commission. As we know, Mr. Speaker, we have made the appointment, the Deputy Premier had appointed the former NDP leader prior to being the NDP leader. I think he had ran twice but hadn't succeeded yet to the advisory group on poverty reduction. Janice McKinnon is currently serving on our Saskatchewan First Tribunal. Many other appointments, Mr. Speaker, non-partisan, not ideological appointments, appointments made on the very merit of these particular individuals. And these are the individuals that this government is not going to bring their name to the floor of this assembly. Reputation on the floor of our provincial legislative assembly, and I would ask the members opposite to not do that either to hardworking Saskatchewan people that are building their community, building our province, and building a better nation like they choose to day in, day out.
Recognize the member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Mr. Speaker, my question didn't touch appointments. We do have some of those questions, but I didn't ask that question. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, there are more unanswered questions about this deal, like why the government decided to exclude the company already doing the work in Saskatoon from a lucrative tire contract, and what's in those two studies that apparently justify this whole mess. The Saskatoon Chamber has called for that report to be released. We have called for that report to be released. Why won't the Sask Party be transparent for once and release that report? And if there are commercially sensitive facts in that report, why won't they release a summary to the public today?
Recognize the Premier.
Speaker, those questions need to go to TSS. They're an industry-led board, Mr. Speaker, industry-led board that is making decisions with respect to the RFPs. Industry-led boards with people that are appointed to it, merit-based appointments to that particular board, like many other boards, Mr. Speaker, like Mr. Miley, who was appointed to a board by this government, like Janice McKinnon, Mr. Speaker. We have a former NDP candidate that this government chose to appoint to the bench in Saskatchewan. Merit-based, and I would say is serving the people of Saskatchewan very, very well, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that will not smear Saskatchewan people that are making for a better community, Mr. Speaker. We will appoint them to positions based on their merit. All we ask is that when you are part of a party that is attempting to vie for votes and form government in this province, why would you bring people's names and spirit on the floor of this ministry?
Premier, I asked the Premier to withdraw and apologize for the comment about buying votes.
What did I do?
He said buying for votes.
Buying.
Buying. Buying.
Say,
Buying.
Mr. Speaker, I said buying, but if you heard buying, I would withdraw and apologize.
He said buying.
Recognize the member from Regina Elphinstone Centre.
Mr. Speaker, every time we ask about this report, that Premier points to the independent arm's-length TSS on this tire fire of a deal. If only that were the case, Mr. Speaker, the Premier's true friend, Richard Porky Porter, was appointed to the Sask Water Board by the Premier just a few months after he joined the Cabinet. Then Mr. Porter chaired the advisory committee that created the TSS and then was appointed a member-at-large to the TSS. And this is someone who has donated thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to that Sask party and to that Premier's own leadership campaign. How can people continue to accept that these boards are independent when that Sask party keeps stacking them with their true friends and their donors?
Recognize the Premier.
Not you, but your colleagues. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with respect, as I said, to the appointments that are made, this government makes numerous appointments. Many have served or supported both sides of the House in this Assembly, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to make those appointments on merit. For example, when it comes to transitional boards or when it comes to transitional committees, it isn't that long ago, on the recommendation of individuals in this Assembly, Mr. Speaker, it was myself, actually, as Minister of Environment, that appointed to the Transition Committee for the Saskatchewan Professional Outfitters an individual by the name of Ray Beck, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, he most certainly served well not only on that transitional committee, but served well on the interim board of the Saskatchewan Professional Outfitters. That recommendation came from a member of the Legislative Assembly, Mr. Speaker, and I would say at this point in time, on behalf of the government, I would say thank you to Mr. Porter for his service, and I would say thank you to Mr. Beck for his service as well.
Recognize the member from Saskatchewan Rivers.
Mr. Speaker, it has come to my attention that Farm Credit Canada is planning to close its head office in Regina and move it to Quebec. This would be a disastrous result for Saskatchewan. Can the Premier confirm or deny this move?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
We have not been apprised of that information, so we don't have anything to comment on it.
Recognize the member from Saskatchewan Rivers.
Saskatchewan farmers are just beginning their spring work, Mr. Speaker. There is enough added stress with higher production costs and now the potential of changes to their main lending institution. While we agree with the Premier's harder stance with the Prime Minister, these actions have consequences. CRA is set to audit the province, and now rumours say that the feds will move FCC from Regina to Montreal. What is the Premier's plan B?
Recognize the Minister of Finance.
Again, we don't answer questions on rumours that someone may have heard somewhere. We have heard nothing on this. There would be concerns for sure. It's the same when the NDP closed all of the rural service centres. There was a concern raised by our party. There would be concerns raised should it be more than just a rumour.
Recognize the member from Saskatchewan Rivers.
Mr. Speaker, on the subject of small modular reactors, the government said this Monday they won't make a decision on pursuing it until 2029. Mr. Speaker, they are betting our future on it. They have already committed to shutting down our coal. That is guaranteed. It has already begun. Just ask the people in Estevan. The government told us, don't worry, SMR will save us. Now they are backtracking and stating they are still deciding. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't sound like they have a plan. The only guarantee we have from this government is that they will kill our coal and shut down natural gas to build solar panels and wind turbines. Can the government be clear? What does their net zero plan look like?
Recognize the Minister of Crown Investments Corporation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to be clear, it's decisions made by the federal government that are going to impair the ability for the province to be able to run our coal fleet to its end of life. That's the Liberal NDP coalition in Ottawa, Mr. Speaker. With respect to SMRs, I've always been clear that we'll make a decision, likely in that 2029 timeframe, Mr. Speaker. We're doing our due diligence and signing agreements like the MOU that we have with Alberta. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize a member from Saskatchewan Rivers.
Mr. Speaker, if the government plans to gamble with our energy grid to achieve their net zero agenda, they should be transparent with the public about the SMR technology. It is highly experimental technology. As of 2023, only China and Russia are operating SMRs on this scale. The one in China is only half the capacity of what the government plans. The ones in Russia are unknown, as we have no data on them. Last year, 7 U.S. states canceled their project to build SMRs, calling it a giant financial debacle. To make matters worse, the company this government has contracted to build their reactors have never even built one before. With so little data supporting this transition, why is the government bound and bent to pursue their net zero agenda, killing Saskatchewan coal and natural gas?
Recognize the Minister of Co-Investments Corporation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed to hear the member opposite, the leader of the United Party, indicating that she's against nuclear power for the province of Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, I would just say that first and foremost, GE Hitachi is working very closely with organizations like Ontario Power Generation. Mr. Speaker, one of the largest nuclear providers of generation in this country, Mr. Speaker. GE Hitachi is going through the process of the design of that reactor, Mr. Speaker. But I would also say the GE Hitachi is the BWRX 300, Mr. Speaker. It's a boiling water reactor. That's where the BWR comes from. The X means 10. It's the 10th generation, Mr. Speaker, so we're very confident that this technology will be one of the ways that we'll move forward with ensuring that we have reliable, safe, and affordable energy for Saskatchewan, should we make that decision in the next couple of years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ministerial